Okay, it's time for my very first garden video of 2023. So first things first, we need to buy our seeds. And we have a local seed store that's owned by Mennonite friends of ours. And this is the place where we get all our garden seeds. And today I'm mostly buying seeds that are cold crops or spring for our spring garden. Things like lettuce and radishes and onions and carrots, red beets, and I'll probably plant some early potatoes. And her seedlings look really nice, so I'm going to get some brassica seedlings. I'm not positive yet if I'm going to plant those in the garden or not. Mostly I'm concerned about setting my seedlings into the garden too early because we'll still get below freezing temperatures and we get lots of wind at this time of year. So I may just put them into my cold frame and wait a couple days. So first thing we have to do back at home is prepare the soil. Now I do a shallow tilling just to break up the crust on top of the garden soil. And yes, most of our garden lies bare most of the winter because I've learned that if I leave my garden covered too thick with old plants or even a lot of compost, I have a lot more pest trouble the following season because pests tend to overwinter in anything that you leave on the garden. So we've had much better success with leaving our garden bare in the winter time. And with recent garden trends like Back to Eden Garden and no-till gardens, I know that I will get comments saying, why are you tilling your garden? That's the wrong thing to do. But believe me, I've been gardening here in this soil for the last 20 years, and our larder is always filled to the brim with harvest, and I have tilled my garden every year. So as you follow along on our garden journey, you will notice that I do a shallow tilling, and then we plant our crops, and then we cover everything that we can. Every bare piece of soil we cover with organic matter, like compost from our animals or grass clippings and things like that to keep the weeds down and to nourish the soil and to lock in the moisture. And true to what I've experienced since I live in this area of the country, when it is time to get into the garden, it is suddenly 70 degrees after having freezing temperatures and snow last week. It's suddenly 70 degrees and it is time to plant our cold crops because summer is fast approaching. And the thing about cold crops is they do not like warm weather. They do much better while the weather is still cold. So we worry less with the cold crops. We worry less about if it's too cold for them, and we worry more about getting them to mature before our temperatures hit 80 degrees. So what I'm going to plant today is I'm going to plant 2 pounds of peas, and these are like the peas, the whole peas, the peas that you shell. And I'm going to plant these in double rows, and I'm going to plant them very thick because peas really love cool roots. So I want to plant them really thick so that they give a nice amount of shade over their roots, and that will help them mature at the rate they need to mature if I keep their roots cold. And the other thing I'm going to plant is just a partial row of sugar snap peas. And these are the kind where you eat the pod and everything. So that's just for fresh eating. But with these peas, we'll hopefully get enough to put into the freezer as well. Now, these peas were available in treated. These were not treated. So I'm a little concerned about the voles that are in my garden because I saw some tunnels and the voles will eat these before they sprout. Once they're sprouted, they're okay, but the voles tend to go after them before they sprout. So I'm going to show you my trick for that later today, trick for the voles. and this is what people have been telling me to do, and we're gonna try it and we're gonna see if it works. But first of all, we're gonna get these peas in the ground. So this is my handy little seeder that I use when I want to plant large amounts of something. And it's got different plates that fit on right here for different size seeds. And then here you can adjust the depth of how deep your seeds go. And we're going to use this to plant our peas. So first we're just going to plant the sugar snap peas. And the sugar snap peas ended up not wanting to feed through my seeder real well, so I planted them by hand. So when I plant my peas, this is about how how thick I want to plant them, because they need each other's support and they want to shade their roots. So you gotta plant them thick enough so it gives a bush that shades their roots and keeps them cool. So now I'm just gonna cover these up. Okay, so this is working much better with these smaller peas. And what happens, you see them falling down, and then this back wheel packs it down, the chain buries them. So I planted 2 double rows of whole peas, and that only took 1 pound of seeds. So I'm gonna save the other pound of seeds and maybe do a fall crop of peas and see how that turns out. And the number one reason I didn't want to plant both pounds is because I know exactly how much room I need for potatoes and tomatoes and peppers in this garden plot, and I didn't want to use up too much of that room for peas. So what we're going to plant next is a leaf lettuce blend, and this is just a blend of lettuce, and we will use this as spring lettuce or cut lettuce, and then we will also transplant some of the little seedlings and plant them out so that they can give a nice head. Like if I see some that are romaine, I will transplant those and that'll turn into head lettuce for us. So this leaf lettuce is just like a grass seed. So we're gonna just seed this on here, and I'm working against the wind here. And then I'm just gonna cover it lightly like I would grass seed. If you can see some of the seeds, that's okay. So because we barely cover these lettuce seeds, I'm going to water them in because the water creates a little bit of a mud that helps the seeds stay in place and not dry out and blow away. So the next thing I'm going to plant is some radishes and onions to go with our lettuce and make a nice spring salad. So I'm making 2 shallow rows for my radishes, and then I'm going to use my garden rake and make more of a bed, a wide row or a wide bed for my spring onions. So next I'm going to plant some French breakfast radishes. And I've just put them in my little seeder. And I've already made my rows, so I'm just going to go drop those in. So next I'm going to plant my onion sets, and these onions are what we will use as green onions, and we'll just chop them all up, tops and everything, and they will form bulbs if you let them in the ground long enough, but they're usually really strong and they don't keep very well. So this is just going to go in our spring salad section of the garden, and they'll be the onions that we use, the greens and everything, like green onions or spring onions. So I've got red ones and yellow ones. So I've got red onions and yellow onions. And I have a pound of each, so I have 2 pounds of these. And because I don't care that I don't want these to form big bulbs, I can plant them pretty close together. And I'll show you here. So I'll do 4, trying to think, I'll do 4, and then in between there, I'll do 3. So planting onions is usually a job where I bring the children in to help. But honestly, they have been enjoying this Monday of no school so much that I hesitate to call them from their play, because they have been playing so peacefully. And I honestly don't mind sitting here doing this all by myself in the peace and quiet. Okay, now we're going to do the same with the carrots. And with the carrots, I want to think carefully where I put them, because unlike the spring salad garden with the seed lettuce and the spring onions and the radishes, that'll all be pulled out and over and done with before the 4th of July. But the carrots will be there all summer. So I want to be very thoughtful about where I put them, because it's one of those long season crops. So I ended up planting about 1/4 ounce of carrots. And we're just gonna cover the carrots very, very lightly, because carrots germinate very hard. So I don't wanna cover them too much, or it'll just take forever for them to germinate. So I'm just gonna take a little bit of soil and sprinkle it on top of my carrot seeds. So one thing to remember about carrots is, especially if you plant them this time of year. So I planted them with my radishes and my lettuce, and that stuff all germinates and comes up real early and real quickly. Carrots are not like that. It takes carrots a long time to germinate. And even though I've been growing carrots successfully for probably 18 years, every year I get to the point where I'm like, well, I guess this is the year my carrots don't germinate. And then sure enough, there they come. And I think last year was one of those years where I'm like, well, I guess the carrots didn't germinate, and I replanted and they did germinate. So then I had 2 different plantings of carrots. So carrots take patience, don't give up on them. And I won't water my carrot seeds in. We have enough moisture in the soil right now that they should be fine. So the next thing I'm going to plant is red beets, and the variety is Detroit dark red. And my row is pretty little, but red beets aren't a priority crop for us, so I'm just gonna finish out my onion row with red beets. And then later in the season, if I find that I still have room, I will probably put in some more red beets. But because we don't depend on red beets to get us through the winter, they don't get a priority spot in the garden. I just use them to kind of fill in where I have, fill in a row, and we will make buttered beets. And I might can some if we have some left, but we don't depend on them. So here goes. And these actually don't go through my little seeder real well, so I just hand seed these. And again, I want to space them pretty far so that I don't have to thin them, because I really dislike thinning red beets or carrots. I'd rather spend that extra time seeding them, spacing them accordingly when I seed them, so that I don't have to pull out all those little plants. All right, so here's our trick for the voles. We're going to chew the gum. And then I left some of their tunnels. So then when it's chewed, you're going to dig in until you can feel where their tunnel is, and drop your gum. You drop the gum all the way down in there, and then they'll eat it. And because they can't digest it, they'll die because it'll get stuck in their stomach.
Well, then why do we plant them? Because they're just going to die.
No, it's an animal. A vole is like an animal. It's like an underground mouse.
Oh,
and they'll eat our seeds. Yeah.
Like Victor Vole.
Victor Vole, yeah. So when you've got your gum chewed, you bring it to me, and then go get another piece.
It's just so juicy.
So when you dig down in their tunnels, you can just feel a hollow down there. So then you just drop the gum down there. You got one?
You
got one? No, give it back. There we go.
I wanted to keep some. Can we stuff one in our pocket?
Yeah, you can have one. But bring me a couple more pieces after that you chewed.
Will this
you got
work?
one? Yep, that works.
Ow! This is fun. We should do this every year.
Right? So the voles were here last year in last year's garden in this area because they ate some of the roots to my new strawberry plants. And I think one of the reasons that they are here in this area is because of all the compost that I left on this new area of the garden this winter. And like I said earlier, wherever we keep our garden covered is where we're more likely to have insect and varmint problems. Okay, the very last thing that we're going to plant today is some red potatoes. The red potatoes are short season, so they'll be ready for fresh eating sooner than the white ones will be. So we are out of potatoes from last year's garden and we're buying potatoes, so I want to get some of these into the ground so that we can have potatoes from our own garden to eat. And then my main crop of keeping potatoes, I'll plant those later, like more when I plant my corn and my beans. Closer to our last frost date is when I'll plant those, because they just seem to do better for me if I don't plant them too early. Like they seem to mature better when the ground is warmer, and they just seem to do better for me if I wait till then to plant them. But Radishes here cutting the potatoes for me, and nope, we don't let them dry before we plant them. I know that some people will cut them and let them dry, let them cure for a couple days, but we've never done that. We've always just cut them and put them straight into the ground, and we haven't ever had any trouble with them rotting, especially if you wait until the ground is warm. So if you're gonna plant them, you know, say beginning of April, like well before your last frost date when your soil's still really cold, then you definitely want to cure them. But by waiting until the soil is warm to plant them, I can completely skip that step. And potatoes are short enough season that we don't have to worry about them not getting ready before our first frost in the fall. They'll easily get ready before that. So there's really no need to plant them so early. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my garden rake, and I'm going to dig a little trench to plant my potatoes in.
It's a little clingy.
It's a little clingy. And this is the method that our parents and grandparents taught us to use for proper spacing of potatoes. And yes, the younger the person, the closer the potatoes are together, but we've never found that to really cause any difference in our harvest. And then I'm just going to take my garden rake and fill in the trench covering the potatoes, and I would say there's probably 2 to 3 inches of soil over my potatoes by the time I'm done. So it was a very good afternoon in the garden. We got everything planted that we wanted to plant, and it is about 6 p.m. and I have only seen the boys at lunchtime and when I called them to come chew the gum for me. So I'm gonna take a walk to the woods and see if I can find the boys and have them come clean up for supper. Hadassah went to the house, and she is making some brats and baked beans for our supper. On my way to the woods to look for the boys, I see the piglets have been digging like piglets do. Is that right, Poppy?
In the bucket is a well macro.
So this is where the boys are. You guys really should be wearing shoes down here.
Nah. Ouch. Under here. Where the people are fadges. Under here. Nuts, yeah. And no shoes, yeah.
So thank you for being here for our very first garden video of 2023. I am sure there will be many more garden videos this summer, since that is one of my favorite things to do. Now, I wanted to let you know that over on Instagram, when you go to my profile, there is an option to subscribe. And what this is, it's $4.99 a month, and then you get exclusive content. And part of that exclusive content is going to be, and I've already started it, it's a garden diary. And so far, what I've got in my garden diary is the varieties of the seeds that I planted today and how many ounces or pounds of each seed. And then as we go throughout the year, I will keep track of what we harvest, and I'll put that all in the garden diary, and dates of harvest, dates of planting, things like that. And in addition to the garden diary, you will have, as a subscriber to my Instagram account, you also have access to printable recipe files that I have been working on and adding to since last fall. So I will drop the link to my Instagram account in the description in case that's something you're interested in. And then also I'm going to put a link for subscribing to our email list, which is another way where you can stay connected with us and get some information that I sometimes cannot share on public platforms like YouTube or Instagram.